Welcome to the corner extravaganza. Okay, we're going to turn corners into curves by using these weird little targets that appeared. Now, if that looked a little underwhelming, it gets a little bit more exciting, but you should stick around because some of the tips we're going to learn here are going to help us later on in the advanced course. So yeah, hang around. Let's learn about corners. All right, so corner options have been around a little while and a lot of people just ignore them. I'm gonna grab my rectangle tool. I've just got a plain document open, nothing fancy. I'm gonna draw a box and it's these guys, these little targets in the corners. If you can't see yours, they're under view and they call them corner widgets. Okay, so you can turn them on and off. They can get annoying a little bit when you're using like the pen tool and stuff or the direct selection tool. But so what they do is, all I do is drag them in and I get rounded corners. Not particularly fancy. We can fancy them up a little bit by grabbing the direct selection tool, the white arrow, clicking on just one corner, and you can kind of do one side, click on the side. Cool. That's kind of cooler. And where it gets nice or more advanced, okay, is holding down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC and just clicking one of these guys. Okay, whatever you've got selected. And you can see I can change it from an outie to an innie to a flat E. Okay, but you get the idea. Okay, so it works for rectangles. It works for anything. Grab the curvature tool and we start doing weird corner stuff. Okay, and you'll see that if I have my white arrow here, whenever there's a corner, you can see I can kind of flatten it out. And that's going to come in really handy later on when we start joining things with the shape builder tool. That was a pretty bad example, but let's look at the star real quick and we'll look at a couple of other options. Don't leave. Okay, so I've got a star. I'm going to drag it out here. I'm going to grab my white arrow. Okay, and you can see there's corners everywhere and I can just kind of like, tidy them up. Or I can select just this one, hold shift and grab all of these guys and just do the outside ones. It does get better than this, I promise. How much better? There are some extra options. If you double click any of these guys, so double click any of the targets, you get kind of like corner options. Okay, and you can decide on how kind of like, how relative or absolute. Okay, just different kind of corners. It depends on how kind of the anchor points make it. You can obviously change your anchor points here as well. And if I go back to the radius, you can kind of push it in and out instead of dragging it. Let's click OK. One thing you might run into is if you're drawing something, say a random shape, I've got the pen tool and just drawing randomness, right? And if I double click on any of these points, it gives me this kind of corner options panel. But you might get, if you're dealing with say a regular shape like a rectangle tool, okay, it's still a primitive shape. Illustrator still knows it's a rectangle. You can see up here it says I'm a rectangle, not random shape. And if I use my black arrow and double click on any of these guys, you get a slightly different window. Controls get a bit more control here, but you can see these are the corners, okay, and these are the corner options. So it's no real difference. Just I'm going to increase this up. You can see I'm working on that top right hand corner there. So just so you know, you might look at a different window than I got just a second ago. Now the big thing to do in here though is, say if I make this lot bigger, scale corners. I can't remember if it's on by default or off by default. I've played with it too many times. But the difference is if I grab my rectangle tool now and scale this down with scale corners, okay, and I'm holding shift so it scales proportionally, it gets smaller. Okay, whereas if I turn that off and I scale it down, you'll notice that eventually it turns into kind of a weird circly egg thing because it's trying to maintain those corners. So you turn those on and off as you need them. If you can't get this thing to open up, just go to Window and go to Transform, okay, and you end up at the same place. One thing you might happen though, you saw I double clicked it, it might end up looking like this to start with. If you double click the word transform, okay, it gets smaller before it gets bigger. So big, medium, a little bit, tiny. I'm not sure why that one's useful, but anyway, you get the idea. You can keep double clicking that word to get the different options. I'm going to click scale on. Seems like a better way of working. Now what I want to do before we go is I'm just going to go back to, remember our whale from earlier? Okay, it really annoyed me, this nose here. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to, remember I'm using my white arrow. If I use the black arrow, I select the whole shape and I don't get those little targets. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to click on just this corner and that's what I wanted for my friend, a little stubby nose. Okay, I'm going to go and wreck a few other bits, but you are fine to carry on. And now I'm going to grab you and just drag you down there. Actually, I just want this top bit. Yep, looks terrible. Kind of looks a little bit more like water. My whale's not like birthing flowers. Yeah. Yuck. All right, you get the idea, right? So corner options, useful. They're going to get more and more useful as we get through that course. So yeah, we need to introduce it now. All right, let's get on to the next video. But before then, I'm going to undo. I'd rather him look like he's ejecting flowers. The other way looked terrible. Okay, now we're going to the next video.